we're going to start talking this week about living well during the pandemic, and it's brought about because we were initially thinking of doing a week just about diabetes prevention, and we realized actually all the principles that apply to diabetes prevention in terms of living well actually do apply to the whole population. And in particular, if we're now potentially facing a second wave, we thought it would be very good to look at how we can make a difference in our own personal lives. So the idea is that actually my slide, oh, here those. So we have 5 webinars this week. Today we're talking about the ingredients of healthy living. Tomorrow we'll be focused on physical activity and exercise and behavioral change. And then on Wednesday we have a healthier habits for reducing risk of COVID-19, looking at smoking and drinking, and also again about diabetes. Jenny Hardnell will do a session on Thursday on 5 weeks of well-being. And on Friday we have a session particularly for focusing on not so much targeted at older people, but how we can support older people in the population, and also looking at how can help our relatives, but also how we can stay well. So the idea is that for every webinar, if you want to join, you have to actually register for each individual one. So if you register for today, but you actually want to join tomorrow as well, you have to register on the healthysomerset.co.uk website, and then you will be able to join us. So my questions for you currently are, have you managed to stay happy and healthy during the COVID-19 pandemic? And yes, how did you do that? And no, what has been your experience? And feel free to put something on chat if you wanted to. I'm just running through it, and maybe at the end, some people might want to comment on it through Emily. So Emily will be verbalizing your written comments. So obviously, if we want to stay well during the pandemic, I can't ignore the government advice about washing hands, covering face, and making space. And at the same time, obviously, as a doctor, I would also urge people, if they are unwell in any way or are taking medication, not to forget their medication, particularly not to forget to take their inhalers on a regular basis. And we're also entering the flu campaign season. So again, if you're in that category, then again, sign up for that as well, because all these things can help you staying well and preparing yourself for a potential further outbreak of COVID. So what I wanted to look at is the ingredients of health and how you can actually promote your well-being. And traditionally, doctors have always concentrated on diet and exercise. And I've reworded that slightly as nutrition and activity. But I've added a few other elements to it as well, which I think are particularly important and as part of our sort of general looking at how we look after ourselves. So if we go through that, nutrition is what we take in. There are a variety of different plates recommended. This particular one I particularly like because it's from the Canadian authorities, and actually it's got a lot of fruit and vegetables on one side and a slightly lower, smaller amount of carbs than the Eat Well plate that is normally recommended in the UK, and also a good amount of protein as well. I'm not saying that anything is better, it's just finding the balance in your life. And I think if the more we push fruit and vegetables, the lower the potential is for us to go off track with carbs and protein. And the other thing is looking at, obviously, alcohol in moderation and vitamin D in particular. There's some evidence to suggest that vitamin D deficiency can increase our risk of potentially getting complications of COVID, or at least there is an association with vitamin D deficiency. So the current guidance is that during winter periods when there's not as much sunlight, we should all be making sure that we've got enough vitamin D. So if you're going out and about a lot, you should have enough. There's also food products that are fortified with vitamin D. But at the same time, if you're not going out very much, if you're indoors a lot, or if you're pregnant, or if you're under 5, then potentially you might benefit from vitamin D. And we've heard about these communities, the Black, Asian and minority ethnic communities, that potentially also because of their darker skin will not absorb as much vitamin D. And therefore, for that particular subgroup, I would recommend also some vitamin D during the winter period. So with regard to food and what we're eating, if you become more conscious of what goes into your mouth, these are the sort of advice that people often recommend. So prepare more of your own meals so you know exactly what's going in. Make the right changes. Know what you need to maybe stop eating and try to eat instead. So in terms of snacks, have more healthy snacks. Think about cucumbers or carrots rather than the chocolate or the nuts or whatever. Read labels. Quite often you find that low-fat food, which is often recommended, contains high amount of sugars. So again, it's looking at the labels. We'll give you some idea as where you are at, and looking for the greens and trying to avoid the reds in there as well. Focus on how you feel after eating. I often like the idea of listening to your body. If you feel very full up, bloated, then maybe you've actually had the wrong food, or maybe you've eaten a little bit too much. And we're all quite often eating more than we should. So it's about how we moderate our food intake, and at the same time drinking plenty of water, which is good for our kidneys, but also good for us in general. Smaller portions. Take your time to eat. Eat with others when possible, so you don't necessarily eat so fast, but at the same time, you're potentially more likely to have a prepared meal rather than, if you're on your own, potentially have a takeaway, or maybe you have a ready meal, which quite often contains a lot of salt or a lot of other ingredients, which may not necessarily be that healthy. So limit snack foods at home and control emotional eating. What we find, and what I recognize, that during the pandemic, because the fridge is full, you can't go out. Quite often, you just go to the fridge and you eat a bit more. And actually, you don't necessarily need to. If you're bored, try to do something else. Try to find a way of dealing with your emotions different than just eating a little bit more. And then it's not just what you eat, but also when you eat. A lot of people think, actually, if I skip breakfast, I do a good thing. But actually, typically, you will find that you will eat a little bit more during the course of the day. So actually, eating breakfast is a good thing and sets you up nicely for the day. And try to then limit the amount of meals that you have throughout the day, or the amount of food you have during these meals. The other thing is avoid eating late at night. Again, quite often people just potentially eat more at night, but at the same time also, because you don't burn it off overnight, let's say food gets stored into fat, and actually as a result of that, you don't necessarily do yourself a favor. And then obviously fruit and vegetables are always recommended. And I think it's just one of these things that try to find what suits you. I mean, I'm not fond of apples, but there are other fruits that I enjoy. So it's a matter of finding the fruit and vegetable that suits you and that you can enjoy. As part of the webinar, I've interviewed two people, and I'd like to introduce Nick to you. Nick is somebody who has made some changes in his life, and I'd like to just listen to this video clip.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Nick, for taking the time to come on the webinar to talk about your health in the context of sort of living well during the COVID-19 pandemic. And yeah, it would be quite good to have a little bit of background information about what your health was like and what it is like now. So you want to start off with maybe just telling us a little bit about what your health was like, let's say roughly 24 months ago.
Sure. I've had quite a turbulent 24 months health-wise. Had a couple of strokes, and I had brain surgery in 2019, which has taken well over a year to recover from, and it caused me to suffer quite a bit of depression, really, because my brain was moving when it shouldn't have been. And I went to see the doctors, and of course they couldn't do anything for me. And it got to a point where they were referring me to a psychiatrist to see if there was anything they could do to help, because I was constantly down in the dumps. I also had quite a heavy drinking habit. So I was drinking a bottle and a half of wine a night, regularly, which made me feel great at the time, but the following day it made me feel rubbish. And that went on for months and months and months and months. I just didn't seem to be getting any better. Then we had the pandemic that hit, and I was really fed up with feeling down in the dumps the whole time. So I decided I'd stop drinking, which I did, and I stopped totally for 3 months, and the difference has been incredible for me. And I didn't, people had told me, Dr. Nunn, Vicky had told me that, I need to stop drinking and alcohol is a natural depressant. But, I wasn't in the right headspace to hear that. As with all these things, you need to get there yourself. But I had got to a point where I was just really bored. I was bored feeling the way I felt. I've recently hit quite a significant birthday. It begins with a 6. I'm not going to go any further. And in the approach to that, I'm thinking, I need to do something because, you run out of time to sort your life out if you're not careful. Yeah. So stopping drinking was the first thing. And then I also needed to lose weight because I was on the border of being diabetic. Well, I was just inside being diabetic. I was pre-diabetic, then I went into diabetic. But since the lockdown, I've lost between 2 and 3 stone. I won't weigh myself because I don't want to know the truth. All I know is I've got more to lose. But I have lost between 2 and 3 stone. And I don't drink anywhere near what I used to drink. Which is fabulous, and I feel like a different person, Henk. Absolutely feel like a different person. It's incredible.
Which is fantastic to hear. So there's quite a big turnaround from where you were, let's say, physically, mentally, let's say 18 months ago to where you are now.
Very much so, yeah, very much so. All I need to do now is win the lottery, and then it would just be the total package.
So Nick, so when you said, because you almost like you were almost ready for change, because you said you were bored and then the pandemic came, it's sort of thing. So what actually made you, and how did you know actually how to change?
Well, only because of things that people had said to me, and the doctors, not yourself obviously, but your colleagues, had tried everything, different tablets, different exercise regimes, all of that. And I think I'm naturally an up person rather than a down person. And I was just fed up feeling the way I felt, You can put up with it for so long. So I had to do something. And drinking, for me, was a relatively easy one to stop, surprisingly. Because I know that for some people, they can get some quite bad side effects from just stopping. But it was almost an overnight improvement for me. Stop. I mean, I still drink now. I drink socially now, but what I try not to have is alcohol at home, and so I don't drink in the same way. So I've changed the habit. It would be unrealistic to stop altogether, although I might do that again just because it's quite an interesting thing to go through.
You feel so much better for it.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% better. I honestly feel like a different person. I've got a man cold at the moment, Henk, so I feel rubbish anyway. But if I didn't have the man cold, I'd probably be bouncing up and down in the chair.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get over that very quickly now. So, but I was just interested to hear that obviously during the pandemic, where maybe other people would have started to maybe indulge a little bit more in either drinking or eating, you've almost done the opposite.
Yeah, the pandemic has been different for me because I for years I've lived by myself and worked by myself. So although it was very different and great fun for the first few weeks, there wasn't a huge difference for me, and it was a kind of good time. The pressure was off, actually, in fairness, because I knew that no one else was doing anything. So the pressure was off. So it was a good time to actually give it a go. And I'm really glad I have, because I you know, I did struggle with my weight, and I do struggle with my weight. So I've stopped eating processed carbs. So I don't eat pasta, I don't eat bread, I don't eat pastry. I can do it every now and then, but as a rule, I don't. So I get my carbs from vegetables, and I eat just meat and vegetables. It was fantastic. I don't miss the carbs at all.
You feel energized sufficiently.
Yeah, very much so. Very much so. And being that much lighter as well gives you a lot more energy as well. I feel more confident in myself. Yeah, just generally happier.
Yeah. Well, you look a lot happier, and you in both mentally and physically. I think you're in a good place by the looks of it at the moment.
Even being 60.
Oh, I'm not sure about that. I've got a few years ahead of me.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and we'll always have a few years ahead of you. Yeah.
So, Nick, if there was anything you could say to somebody who was watching this or listening to this, who was maybe struggling with their health and maybe had tried a few things and were very ambivalent because they thought this is not for me or I can't do this, what would you say?
It's difficult because it's like stopping any habit. It doesn't matter how much someone tells you or how many times you get nagged about it, unless you're in the right space mentally, you'll never do it. If you can get your head into the right space to stop or change your habits or replace your habits with something else, then I'd urge anybody to have a go, because it really does make such a difference. And the things that we rely on and we think are good for us are doing as good, i.e. for me, the alcohol, it's a load of rubbish. You know, it didn't. And actually changing that, and the feelings I felt when I stopped drinking were so much better than the feelings I felt when I was drinking. So there was no question about that. No question that that's what I should be doing.
Henk, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So yeah, so I've cut short slightly the video because there's some other stuff to cover as well. So we've talked about nutrition as one of the elements. Activity is the other one, and activity or exercise is so beneficial. There are so many health benefits of moving, and it doesn't have to be running around. It can be all sorts of different sort of activities that can be beneficial for us. And we know that actually physical activity for adults cuts down the risk of diabetes, heart disease, reduces the risk of falls, and also reduces the risk of cancer. We know that actually if you lose weight and you're at a healthy weight and you're physically active, your risk of these things is reduced. And it's not just your physical health, but also your mental health that's beneficial, let's say, benefiting from that as well. So these are the sort of the general sort of numbers that people may be familiar with: 150 minutes, which is about 30 minutes, 5 days a week of moderate intense activities. So that would be either swimming or brisk walking or cycling, or a slightly less amount of time, but then let's say more vigorous. At the same time, also thinking actually, if I spend my time less sitting down and more walking around and maybe more standing. Some people nowadays adopt the approach, they stand at work at the desk. And that again is a way of actually improving your physical fitness, and improving your balance is another aspect as well. So it's looking at a variety of different activities you can do to improve your well-being. And so on the whole, what I would advocate is an active lifestyle with exercise, which you can try to build in during the day. It doesn't have to be in one go, one day a week. It can be different times of the week. Exercise during lunch, go for a walk, park the car away from the office is another thing, or if you're in a supermarket, park it away so that actually just walking that little bit more, and it just enable you to feel a little bit better as a result of that as well. So regular physical activity is something I would say is an important part of a healthy lifestyle. And the advantage of doing so, I mean, helps maintaining a healthy weight. We already said about the reduction of risk in cancer and cardiovascular disease. It's good for your mental health. We know there's a lot of people actually exercise and find that just going out gets these endorphins going and actually makes them feel better. If you do it together with other people, that enhances your social relationships. So again, it's great to do something and make an effort together and actually just bonding in that way. And at the same time, we also know that exercise improves your immune system, enhances your quality of sleep. So lots and lots of benefits. And on that basis, I'm going to just show you the next video, which is with Jack Wilkins, who's actually online with us as well. And I'm going to ask her another question after this as well. So let's have a look at the interview with Jack.
Let's see. Good afternoon, Jack. It's great to see you being represented here on the webinar, and it would be quite nice to hear a little bit from you the experience you've had with regard to sort of lifestyle changes you've made and what benefit it has had on you. So could you tell us a little bit more what your health used to be like?
Hi, yes. Well, I was overweight and I was pre-diabetic. I was diagnosed with peripheral neuropathy, arthritis in my lower spine and one knee and one foot. I have allergies, I have IBS, and I also have some heart disease, which was highlighted by the breathlessness when I started running. So if I hadn't taken up running, that would have been missed. So
yes, you've got quite a lot of different things going on with you, and so that must have had quite an impact on you as your own sort of sense of well-being.
Yes, it did. I felt as if I was getting old.
But somehow you've changed. Something's changed, and maybe you can tell us a little bit more. What did you do?
Yeah, over the last few years, well, my choices were to sit still and get old and take prescription medication, or to stand up and stay active. And I realised that and started to do something about it. And I feel fitter today than I was 10 years ago when I walked with a walking stick. Now I regularly exercise and I'm a runner, and that's what defines where I'm at in my life rather than what health issues I still have.
So it's changed the way you think about yourself.
Yes, it's made me realise that you're not defined by what you can't do, you're defined by what you can do. And having ailments doesn't mean you can't have an active, healthy lifestyle. It just means being self-aware and modifying what you try to do or what you hope to do.
Yeah, really good. And so what actually motivated you to change? What was the driving force?
Well, I think seeing advertised in the local paper various things was a trigger for me. I mean, the motivation for me personally was that I thought I was over the hill and destined to suffer pain and debilitation. So anything that offered me an alternative had to be worth trying, really. And I love doing new things. So when I saw the newspaper ads, I did things like belly dancing, Tai Chi, djembe drumming, Zumba, yoga. And then I saw the GP's couch to 5K. And I'd never even considered running. I'd never even run for a bus, I don't think. But I thought, oh yeah, that's interesting. I'll have a go at that. So I did.
Was that quite a big hurdle to take, or was it something you just naturally did?
No, it was a big hurdle. I'd never done anything like it before. And on the first day, we ran for 1.5 minutes and I couldn't do it. You know, I was puffed out and it was just, I felt like a bit of a joke, really, you know. And I know from what the GPs told me later on that she didn't expect me to see the course through either. She didn't think I'd make it through, and I didn't really. I don't know why I did it. I just thought, oh, that looks good, I'll have a go at that, without really thinking about how far I'd get in it. I just, I was luckily for me, I like challenges, and I saw it as a challenge, and I took it up.
So you didn't give up after the first, let's say, 1.5 mile?
No. I just kept turning up again. And everybody was in a similar position. That was why we were there. We had issues, and we were struggling with weight or health or life, and just wanted to make changes, and that was an opportunity to do it. So we were all kind of egging each other on, and it was very well designed that the GPs would double back, so you never felt you were right at the back. Although I nicknamed myself at the back Jack, because I was always at the back because I was the oldest and the slowest. But they didn't make me feel like that, because they get further ahead and then they double round and come back and sort of collect me. And there was occasions when I was at the front, so that was quite nice.
Well, that's actually a nice feeling indeed as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So what would you say were because obviously from where you were to where you are is a huge change, not just in your physical, but also in the way you approach life. I mean, what would you say are the main benefits of the lifestyle changes that you did make?
The main benefits. I feel like a runner. I feel like a purposeful person, whereas before I felt like an old person who'd reached a certain stage and was due to sit around and wait, for the inevitable. And I thought about my pains a lot at the time because I didn't have other distractions, and I think exercising is a distraction. A lot of the time the aches and pains are still available, if you like, but I choose to do other things.
And the conditions you talked about, heart condition and pre-diabetes, where are you with regard to that at the moment?
Well, for example, at the start of the Couch to 5K, I was running with a wonky arthritic knee, but in the 2 years I've been running, I can honestly say I feel much healthier and more mobile now. I don't get anywhere near, I get a few twinges in the knee, and I have to modify what I'm doing, and then it eases off again. So that's, I'd say, is improved. My weight has gone from, it was always for years, it had been between 87 and 90 kilograms. Now it's down to just under 70. Wow. So still a bit overweight, but quite a big loss really. In my pre-diabetic scores, what I was 41, that's down to 38. And stretching and yoga gives me flexibility in my back and my stiff spine. So I had to start reaching my feet so I could do up my running shoelaces. So that was the drive to do the yoga and to get more flexible. I still have the peripheral neuropathy burning in my legs and feet, but I don't feel it when I'm dancing and when I'm running. So exercise works for me, where the amitriptyline, the gabapentin, didn't touch it.
And what would you say if anybody was watching this and they would say they've tried things before and it's never worked before, or maybe they think it's not for them? What would you say to people that may think actually it's not for them to change their lifestyle?
Well, I'd say that our bodies are built for movement, and if I can do it with my health issues, I'm sure a lot of other people out there could as well. I say when I started the Couch to 5K, I couldn't really participate properly, and we had homework to do, so we did a couple of little runs on our own midweek before we met up again the following week. And I started enjoying it because I could set my own pace. I could run very slowly. It didn't matter how long I took to do it. And I found that I felt that I was in control there. So, I mean, I'd say don't pass up on the chance to feel better than you do today.
Well, thank you so much for telling your story to us. It's very inspiring, and certainly to see that you're feeling so much better for it. So thank you very much, and people may want to ask questions at some stage, but thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Jack, to tell your story. I understand you're with us at the moment as well, and one of the questions I was going to ask you is how you actually coped during the pandemic. What was your strategy during the pandemic?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Okay. So I suppose I experienced all the normal reactions to it, the disbelief and shock and anger and fear and frustration, confusion. and I suppose a degree of acceptance and adaptation. And what helped me to cope is being active and setting myself small but frequent challenges and goals. And even with the health issues I've got, I just pace myself, and I can always do something every day, whether it might be a run, it might be dancing or yoga, or it might just be 2 minutes skipping in the garden or using my hula hoop. But in this current COVID climate, where so much of our lives seem out of our control, it's a part of my life where I can be proactive and also staying in touch with positive people. And I was very impressed with what Nick was saying about you've got to be in the right place in your head. And before lockdown, I joined Freem's Mojo Moves, which is an all abilities community fitness class, and we dance and prance around to a range of old school music. And at lockdown, the classes went online and still are, and it gives me something to include in my choice of daily activities. And also I've kept in touch over social media with the Mojo friends I've made, and I think that's quite important, being in touch with people who are feeling positive. And the things you're saying about diet and health and what you eat, all things I know but don't do. So it's quite nice to hear them again, because the repetition is good. There's things I know I should be eating and don't. And there's also what I call moving mindfulness. So not sitting on a cushion chanting, but being aware in the moment. So if I'm having a conversation or if I'm washing dishes, I'm giving it my full attention rather than doing one thing but thinking and talking about in my head about something else. So I used to think I was the ultimate multitasker, but I'm not really seeing that as such an asset now. I'm trying to do one thing at a time and trying to do new things, new challenges, but just to concentrate on doing one thing at a time.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I mean, your story is such a positive one. It's taking opportunities, and obviously we can all learn from that. Actually, that okay, if there are situations where maybe we are limited, that we try to overcome these limitations and to maybe use within the boundaries that we've got, we can still work. But thank you again. And if people have any questions, please chat them down, and then we'll come to that at the end, because that would be great. But thank you again. Let's talk a little bit about you already actually Jack already mentioned a little bit about mindfulness, and it's about actually how do we actually deal with all this activity and all this the nutrition. Actually, we need to not just be active, we need to also find ways of relaxing. Our bodies need to be in balance, and if we are constantly on the go, then potentially we burn ourselves out. But if we are able to learn to relax in a positive way, then obviously we can benefit. We can digest what we've been taking in, and we can actually let our bodies calm down and allow to restore. So there's a multitude of ways to relax yourself, and I'm sure people all have different ways of doing it, but it's trying to find something that works for you and potentially be inspired with other people. Is saying actually, okay, maybe I can take up this park run, or maybe I can do something on let's say listening to music, looking at something that actually really is fun to do and can relax you at the same time. On the basis of relaxation, there is a very helpful website, which is healthconnectionsmendip.org. You can see it at the bottom here. If you go onto the website, under the support for me, there are resources, and under the resources, you can see already a little bit like a tip of the at the tip of the top here, the mental well-being and physical activity. There are a huge amount of resources, and one of them is about relaxation and some sort of audio tapes and recordings that you can listen to that can help you relax. But at the same time, there's some quite a lot of different ideas as well in terms of breathing exercises and others. So I would definitely recommend, if you haven't visited this previously, is to look at mendiphealthconnections.org and go to the resources bit. Next, come to sleep. In the past, I used to think that sleep was a luxury, and I tried to do less of that than I do now. And I realized that sleep is, and I think this is also what science tells us, that sleep is so important, that actually sleep allows us to recuperate, for our bodies to digest what's going on, and to restore us, to help with our memory as well. We know that actually people that are chronically out of sleep are increased risk of memory loss, and also there is some evidence that lack of sleep chronically can lead to malignancy. So again, if your sleep is poor, try to find a way of improving that. And that doesn't necessarily mean you need to take a tablet. There are some natural ways of calming yourself down. And going back to the previous sort of website, on that particular one, there's some particularly helpful tools that you can follow. Either you can listen to something, or maybe you can help to still your mind, listen to your breathing in and out in a certain fashion, to allow yourself to get into a mode for to sleep. And obviously it's trying to do the usual things like not having any screen time just before you go to bed. Make sure you don't have any stimulants just before you go to bed, to allow your body to go into a slow down mode. So regular poor sleep puts people at risk. So there are a variety of things that can happen if you're not sleeping well. The next thing is that's what I sort of an eye-opener in the last few years, which is socializing, as in the importance of us working, let's say, living and working together. Socializing is being obviously one of the many facets of human interaction, but it's how we are connected to other people. And actually, social interaction is so important. If you lack social interaction and become isolated, you're at increased risk of all sorts of diseases, but also increased risk of death. And up to a degree, and the percentages are staggering. And so they say the magnitude of the effect of socializing is comparable to that of smoking, and exceeds those of many other known risk factors like obesity and physical inactivity. So we are made to connect, and in order to feel well, we don't necessarily look after just our bodies and our minds. We're looking after our social side of as well, and that can be quite a hurdle. Some people find it very difficult to socialize, and some people find it easier. But in order to get us out of our maybe lonely situation, there are ways of doing it. Obviously, currently we are a bit restricted because of the pandemic, but we can still meet in parks. We can still meet on Zoom. We can meet potentially in people's houses up to 6. But it's that sort of scenario where we are encouraged to actually meet up, because that's so important for us. Now, there are organizations also, like, for example, Active and in Touch, which is in Froome or in the Mendips, that reach out to people that are not able to actually maybe meet up with somebody, or maybe they don't have anybody, no relatives, no friends nearby. And again, it's so good to hear that since the pandemic came out, a multitude of people have come forward to volunteer to help out, not just for the shopping, but also actually just to meet somebody. And maybe you meet on the doorstep, but at least you meet face to face. And all that sort of social interaction is so important for us as human beings, and for our mental and physical well-being. And these are just examples of social interaction that can be used if you isolate. So befriending service, I talked about Active and in Touch, but there are a multitude of other organizations that do a similar sort of thing. Men's sheds, community sheds, obviously at the moment maybe a bit restricted, but still they do exist, and people do come together. There's talking cafes. They currently mainly work online, but still it's another way of meeting people. Sports activities. It's just looking at a variety of things, obviously, that you can still do in this particular setting. The farming community network is important, particularly we know that a lot of farmers work in isolation, and there's a lot of mental agony and mental health problems within the farming community. So again, there are resources and groups available for them to reach out to. The next element of ingredient of healthy lifestyle is routine. Keeping a daily routine helps you to stay organized and focused, and it's a means for achieving the work-life balance. So regular habits obviously help you to do things at least on a regular basis. And as a result of that, you don't forget it. And if you are making a habit of going for a swim every Tuesday morning, or you go for a run every Friday evening, by doing that, you know that it's just ingrained in you, and it's helping you to actually make things happen that maybe naturally you may not do, but actually by having a routine in your life, it enhances your ability to embed some healthy habits. And obviously you can also then become an example to other people as well. If you're doing it on a regular basis, you can invite other people potentially to join, and it can be fun. It doesn't have to be boring. There's lots of activities that you can do, and it's about and getting this sort of rhythm in your life, which then becomes a rhythm in your body as well, and that is a healthy thing. So the benefits of routines are: you get improved mental health, less anxiety, you feel more refreshed, there's increased mental sharpness and performance, your emotional well-being goes up, your energy levels go up. By having a regular routine of activity, you encourage others to do the same. It has a positive effect generally on health, motivation, and self-esteem. Finally, we come to self-care, which is obviously opposite to maybe caring for others, but at the same time, I think it's an important part, because a lot of people, certainly in the caring professions, they give and give and give, and somehow you burn out. And it's one of these where you have to sometimes stand still and say, how do I look after myself? And it almost comes back to almost all the ingredients what we've talked about already, is the different aspects of self-care in both the physical, the emotional, the social, spiritual is the sort of thing that obviously people feel inclined to, personal space, finding something that actually allows you to retreat to find ways of saying, actually, I feel comfortable in this. And you need to look after yourself at times, because if you don't look after yourself, eventually you burn up. So it's about looking after yourself as a way of showing self-respect, which hopefully then also enables you to go out again and help others. So we've looked at a balance between not too much and not too little of nutrition. We know that some people are, especially during this particular period, have been underfed, and luckily we've got food banks and there are other organizations that help other people out. But again, it's about finding the balance in your own life. What do you eat? How much do you eat? Activities. We talked about relaxation, sleep, the importance of socializing, of routine, and eventually of self-care. So before maybe we have some questions, I'd like you to ask you some questions based on this. In which areas of your life do you think you're out of balance? And if you've identified the area that you think is out of balance, what would be your next step in order to move towards a better balance?